Welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show where we round up the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. We're currently in Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend at the moment, and there's been plenty of huge news items from the world of F1 over the past week. Adrian Newey has joined Aston Martin, but could Max Verstappen join him there in the near future? Why have Honda and Alpine been in breach of the cost cap? And why were Newey's demands from Ferrari too much for the Scuderia? All that and a whole lot more is coming right up. So Adrian Newey has gone over to Aston Martin. This isn't news. It feels like it's been confirmed for quite some time now, and we've covered it extensively here on the F1 Chronicle already. But the rumours of someone else following him from Red Bull to Aston Martin, notably, of course, their three-time champion Max Verstappen, the rumours of that are abound. They are happening. So let's have a look at what's being said here, because as far as I was concerned, Red Bull had a deal with Max Verstappen to keep him at the team now until at least 2027, but there are rumours about him having a deal actually now that's 2028 because of some contract clauses and some stuff with Marco allegedly being sewn up now. Aston Martin's driver lineup, in theory, is meant to stay the same until the end of the 2026 season, because both Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll are actually tied down with the team until then. But could things change after that? Could things change even sooner, perhaps? Well, there's a full article here on the F1 Chronicle as always, guys. If you want to check it out, please do, of course. But I'm going to read from it today. Just see what's being said with this rumour, because the 2025 grid is pretty much set. There's only two seats that aren't decided yet. The second RB seat, which is probably either going to go to Liam Lawson or Daniel Ricciardo. And then there's the Sauber seat, which is up for grabs very much. There's a lot of drivers in the fray, really, when it comes to that. But let's have a look at what's happening with Max Verstappen and potentially going to Aston Martin. So, fresh on the heels of Adrian Newey's decision to sign with Aston Martin, Max Verstappen is already being linked with a similarly sensational move from Red Bull. Italy's Autosprint magazine believes that Aston Martin team owner Lawrence Stroll is already in negotiations with the triple world champion, whose father Jos has already been flirting with a potential move to Mercedes for his son. Former F1 driver Ralf Schumacher thinks Newey decided to leave because of the internal team turmoil in 2024, which may even explain Red Bull's sudden fall from dominance. I mean, he hasn't outright said it, but he's almost said it in as clear terms as he can. I mean, there was an interview I saw with him with Newey, with the High Performance podcast, and he basically said after Suzuka during the Japanese Grand Prix weekend, which was the fourth round of the season, it was early on, like April time, he basically decided in that weekend that he wasn't going to continue. And I imagine what was happening with Horner, really, he just didn't want to be around it. He's Adrian Newey, he's won 20 odd championships in Formula 1 if you combine driver and constructors championships. The guy doesn't need this kind of stress. He's in his 60s, he's achieved everything he wants to achieve. But clearly he has one more mission left him, at least one more mission, and that's to get Aston Martin to be champions. Basically, it's getting to win a race at least. They haven't managed that yet. Anyway, let's have a look at this. So, Ralf Schumacher said the following to Sky Deutschland. He said, the unrest at the beginning of the year certainly contributed to it. But that's not all that has been happening. You hear a lot in the paddock. There's a lot of talk around that team, said Schumacher, who admitted he has heard rumours that Christian Horner's management style is not quite as nice anymore. Yeah, again, there's been hints at that, I think, that Horner was, would I say, disrespecting Newey? Yeah, I would actually. If what is being said is true, I think he was overreaching, micromanaging, and basically saying as well that Newey is not as important to Red Bull as what a lot of people think. Which, if there's going to be famous last words, it's going to be them. It's going to be them. Newey admits he has also had talks with Ferrari. Again, I've covered that already. But was ultimately attracted by Stroll's passion for the Aston Martin project, the rapid development of the Silverstone-based team, and the offer of a team shareholding. And a big wage as well, which will help, of course. But I'm not criticising. Before anybody says anything. That's just a fact. Why would you know? If you were Newey, why would you know? We have managed to bring in the best, Aston Martin's ambassador Pedro de la Rosa told DAZN. And it's because Adrian believes the team is ready for him. Not all the teams are ready to bring in a figure like Newey. De la Rosa insists that he didn't know Newey had signed the signature until the rest of the world found out. We knew absolutely nothing, I can assure you. The truth is that we knew nothing, but we knew that it was a dream scenario. It's very important for the history of Aston Martin in Formula 1. I think it clearly marks a before and after, absolutely. De La Rosa also said he understood how serious team owner Stroll was about succeeding in Formula 1 when he began to target multiple world champions to serve in the cockpit. The fact that he signed Fernando, it shows willingness and to see one world champion go and react immediately by signing another, said the Spaniard, referring to Vettel. Yeah, of course, we've had Vettel, then Alonso, Verstappen next, possibly. That is what he did with Fernando. That's what he's done now with Adrian, always counting only on the best so that the team grows. But even as the new Verstappen to Aston rumours begin to swell, Alpine advisor Flavio Briatore warns that the team cannot expect to simply buy success via prominent individuals. Formula 1 is actually not a sport of egos. Coming from you? Mr. Signori Ego himself? Oh my days, right, come on, keep going. One man alone cannot change a team. Of course, they can buy whatever they want, but the result will not be related to them. Sour grapes. Apparently, he knew he was also offered a contract by Alpine, and again, it was a similarly massive deal in terms of like $100 million over 3 years or something. Flavio's very much sour grapes there. That is incredibly rich coming from him. I mean, yeah, you can't buy success in Formula 1. You have to have everything in place. I do take his point there. I mean, you look at the examples of Toyota in Formula 1. They spent more than any other team, I think, other than Ferrari, and didn't even get a single win to the name in the sport. BMW as well, you know, they almost got a championship, but ended up completely crashing out in 2009. You know, there are examples of big companies and big investments coming into F1 and not working out, but Newey's different. Adrian Newey's different. The guy is just on another level. We'll have to see. I mean, yeah, they have to have a driver that's able to win a championship. Will they have that in 2026 with Alonso and Stroll? Debatable, but if he produces a car that's like 2 seconds faster than everybody else on the grid, they'll win the championship. You know, you could put Logan Sargent and Guan Yu Zhou in that car, and they still win the championship that quick. So yeah, no disrespect to those guys, of course, but come on, they're not championship winning drivers. Well, Sargent's not even in F1 anymore. So yeah, interesting. For what it's worth, I think that Verstappen probably will move on from Red Bull at some point. Whether that is to not drive in Formula 1, obviously, because he can't be there forever. He's got to move on at some point. If Red Bull come out the blocks in 2026 and the car's terrible, he'll move. He might go to Mercedes. He might replace George Russell at Mercedes, or if Antonelli's not working out, go there. He might go to Ferrari if Sir Lewis decides to retire. I don't think he will, to be honest, but you know, it's just something like that. And Aston Martin's absolutely a chance for him, because if Aston Martin produce the best car in 2026 and Verstappen goes to Lawrence Stroll, knocks on his door and it's just like, hey man, you got a car for me? He'd be like, absolutely, sir. Doesn't sound like that, does he? But you know what I mean. So I think, you know, as great as Fernando Alonso is, he's going to be like 45 years old at that point. I would say get rid of Stroll, but you can't have Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen in the same team. That is just like pouring petrol on a fire trying to put it out. It's just not going to work. It's just going to make it worse. So yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on it. I think it's definitely possible, but we're not going to see a change until 2027. I think is the earliest realistically it's going to happen. Alonso's going to have a watertight contract with them, and I can't see Stroll getting rid of his son to put Max and Fernando up as teammates. So we've been speculating a lot about the driver who's going to take over the second Audi seat for next season. Obviously it's going to be Sauber still, but they are owned by Audi and they're going to become Audi for 26. So there's massive potential in that team, even though currently they are bottom of the Constructors' Championship with 0 points. Nico Hülkenberg is going to transfer to the team from Haas. But who's going to get the second seat? Now, we have theorised about this a lot. There's been the likes of Carlos Sainz in the fray before, but he's going to Williams now. Gabriel Bortoletto's been rumoured a lot. And then you have to look at the two incumbent drivers as well, Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. And there's been rumblings of Mick Schumacher getting this seat as well, potentially, but I wouldn't put too much on that. So there's an article here on the F1 Chronicle going over the latest rumours when it comes to this. And the two drivers in the fray, apparently there's only a two-horse race really when it comes to this, are Bottas and Bortoletto. So it's going to be bot or bought. Let's see. And of course, I did an exclusive interview with Bortoletto recently. Really, really nice guy. Really enjoyed it. Do check that out on 5 minutes if you haven't already, of course. But let's have a look what this article's saying. So the final real vacancy on the 25 grid is turning into a clear two-horse race between Bottas and Bortoletto. Not too long ago, it seemed obvious that Bottas was set to lose his seat at Audi-owned Sauber, reportedly leading to exploratory talks with IndyCar teams. First I've heard of that. But when asked at Baku if he's still in those talks, the Finn reports, not anymore. Bottas also answered a simple yes if he is still 99% sure he will remain with Sauber beyond 2024. Confidence. I shouldn't say too much, but this situation now, even if there is still a lot to discuss, but we are going in the right direction, he insisted, revealing he is in regular contact with new team boss Mattia Binotto. We've had a few litres of coffee, Bottas laughed. and we're still negotiating. Things are progressing and I'm still positive about F1, but obviously both sides need to be happy. It's believed that Binotto is reluctant to make a decision now, as interesting names may soon suddenly appear on the open market, such as Liam Lawson. Yeah, I mean, if Ricciardo keeps his RB seat, Liam Lawson could come in as well. But Kleiner Zeitung newspaper believes Lawson will be confirmed by Red Bull's junior team RB as soon as this weekend in Azerbaijan. And indeed, Helmut Marko has said that Liam Lawson will know his Formula 1 future in September. He said by September, but now I'm going to say that as in September. So sometime during this month. We've obviously got Azerbaijan, but then we've got Singapore next week, and then there's not another race for another month pretty much until the United States Grand Prix. So it's going to be this weekend or next. You would think. So Bottas aside, the other leading candidate will be Nico Hülkenberg's teammate next year is the impressive rookie and F2 frontrunner Bortoleto, a 19-year-old Brazilian. I still can't believe he's 19, but he is. He speaks very well as well, I must say. His English is better than mine, I'll be honest. He is managed by Fernando Alonso's Group A14 management and has reportedly received permission by McLaren to negotiate with Audi. Let's see what the future brings, said Alonso in Baku and asked about Bortoleto's chances, but it's a matter of time before he gets into F1. Well, of course Alonso's going to big him up. And a really cool story that Alonso and his agency have a Formula 1 driver so soon. I mean, there's other drivers in his agency as well. I think Gabriele Mini is as well. He's going to get his Formula 2 debut in Baku this weekend as well after finishing runner-up in the Formula 3 Championship this season. So, what do I think? Well, it's really tough at the end of the day. I mean, for me personally, and I know some people will be like, oh, you're his mate. Of course you're going to say this. Listen, we've had an interview. He was great. I'd love to say we're friends, but let's be honest here, I've had one conversation with the guy, but I was very impressed with what he had to say, I really enjoyed it, and I think if you're thinking about potentially poaching him for the future, because at the end of the day, he's a McLaren reserve driver, but his chances of getting into that McLaren seat anytime soon completely relies upon Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris vacating their current seat. Is that likely to happen? Who knows? But right now, no. And it's not going to happen anytime soon. The soonest that could realistically happen is for the 2027 season. And, you don't want to be stuck in limbo. And McLaren don't want him to be stuck in limbo either. Look at these great Formula 2 drivers that don't have a seat. Felipe Drugovich, Teo Pourchaire. It's doing a couple seasons to get in. It took Gasly a couple seasons to get in. It's tough. So from McLaren's point of view, they'd want to get him some experience in 25 and 26 with a potential race in 27 if he really impresses. Conversely as well, Audi could poach him. He's got a contract with McLaren, but who knows? Those contracts could be broken, that contract could expire, and Audi could then get a young, very marketable, very quick Brazilian driver who has lots of potential. So for me, I'd personally go for Bortoleto, but I also understand the argument that experience is going to be very key, especially when driving what could well be the worst car on the grid next year. They're the worst car on the grid this year, so why wouldn't that continue next year? Okay guys, we've got some breaking news here on the F1 Chronicle. This has just come to us now, and I'm going to react to it because we've been talking a lot about McLaren and should they prioritise Lando Norris over Oscar Piastri? What's the teammate dynamic? This is all big news really, that a lot of discussion going into this Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend. And now it seems as though we have official confirmation that McLaren are putting all of their eggs in the Lando Norris basket. Let's have a look at this. Shout out to Andrew Benson from the BBC Sport for covering this. This is the article I'm going to read from today for this. So, McLaren are to prioritise Lando Norris over teammate Oscar Piastri in their bid to win both the Formula 1 World Championships this year, that being the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. But the team principal Andrea Stella said any actions taken to back Norris in the Drivers' title chase would happen only within the team's principles of sportsmanship and fairness. Sounds like the papaya rules, but let's keep going with this. Stella said the following to BBC Sport: the overall concept is we are incredibly determined to win, but we want to win in the right way. Fair enough. I've already agreed with that as well. I mean, I'm not wearing a papaya shirt, I'm wearing an orange one today, but kind of goes with the theme of the team we're talking about here. Norris heads into this weekend's Azerbaijan Grand Prix 62 points behind Red Bull's Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship, with a maximum of 232 still available. Piastri is in 4th place in the championship, 106 points behind Verstappen. That also makes him 44 behind Norris. Stella, speaking in an exclusive interview, said the following: we we will bias our support to Lando, but we want to do it without too much compromise on our principles. Our principles are that the team interest always comes first. Sportsmanship for us is the most important thing in the overall way we go racing. And then we want to be fair to both drivers. Until now, McLaren had allowed Norris and Piastri to race each other without interference from the team. The shift in policy towards finding ways to boost Norris's chances of beating Verstappen in the driver's title continues after a series of meetings between McLaren bosses and their drivers following the Italian Grand Prix. In Monza, Norris and Piastri qualified first and second to do a front row lockout, but the Australian driver overtook the British driver on the first lap, and the incident led to Ferrari's Charles Leclerc getting between the two McLarens. Leclerc went on to win the race from Piastri and Norris. Verstappen finished at uncompetitive 6th. Stella said, what we don't want to see is any more a situation like in Monza, in which we enter chicane 1 and 2, but we exit 1 and 3, because that is a detriment to the team. I agree, it is. It's hard to disagree with that. The team interest comes first, and these are the situations that above all we need to fix, because eventually, as a matter of fact, the way we entered the race in Monza left the door open this situation. After Monza, 3 objectives: we need to make sure that anything that happens on track is not to the detriment of the team. Secondly, we need to win both championships. Both drivers committed to help. And thirdly, well, there is no third one, but we don't want to do it in a reckless way. Those are 3 topics. Oh, that was the third one, reckless way. And they define the way we go racing in Baku. This will be updated after Baku. Interesting. Well, I mean, I said a couple days ago in a video that basically, as a McLaren fan as well, I mean, everybody's got their own opinion on this, but as a McLaren fan, I personally think they should allow the drivers to race, to compete with each other, as long as both drivers have a chance of winning the Drivers' Championship. It's more than likely that McLaren are going to win the Constructors. They've not got the lead yet, but they're probably going to get it after this race. Furthermore to that, I feel like otherwise it is a bit bad to ask Piastri to do this sort of thing, but at the same time, they've made it public, so they obviously thought about this decision, and clearly, Piastri must be on board with it, but he's going to play the team player. And there might not be that many situations where something similar like this happens, but it could happen in Baku again. And they've laid what they're going to do out to both drivers, and they've clearly accepted it. And from a purely competitive team point of view, it makes perfect sense. What Stella says makes sense, because it's like, well, Piastri didn't do anything wrong in the rules of engagement, but because of what he did when he went for that overtake, they lost the place effectively. They were no longer first and second, they were first and third. So I totally get it, and it is a detriment to the team because it is going to be tight. Red Bull could make a comeback in the latter parts of the season. There's still, 8 rounds still to go, 9 races still to go. There's a long way to go in this championship season still. So I understand it. I think it's good they've made it public. From a purely neutral point of view, I think it is a bit bad to ask Piastri to do this, but he is contract to the team, and there's worse things that teammates are asked to do than this. And clearly Piastri feels okay with it. And it's like I said in an article earlier this week when Stella was talking about Piastri making an investment for the future. This could come to benefit Piastri in the future. And clearly they've both agreed to it, Norris and Piastri, otherwise they wouldn't. I mean, why would Norris not? Why would Norris not agree to this? But clearly they've both agreed to it, and they're going to go from here. So I think it's the sensible thing to do. From a purely racing point of view, it's not the most positive thing, but I understand it. They're not the first team to do team orders. They're not the last team to do team orders. Every team on the grid does it every other race pretty much, guys helping each other out. So, alright, so some news came through yesterday that Honda and Alpine have breached the cost cap rules in Formula 1. And when I heard this, I thought, Honda? Honda don't even have a Formula 1 team. I mean, they're associated kind of with Red Bull now. They've kind of got their own thing going, Red Bull, and Honda are coming in properly to Formula 1 again as an engine supplier for 2026 for Aston Martin. But how have they breached the cost cap regulations? Well, there's a full article here on BBC Sport I'm going to read from today just to kind of get the lowdown of what's going on here. So, engine manufacturers Honda and Alpine have both committed a procedural breach of the F1 cost cap regulations, said the governing body, the FIA. Honda is the partner of world champions Red Bull, while Alpine is the supplier of Renault-owned team of the same name. I mean, technically it's Renault that supplies the engines, but okay. A statement from the FIA did not detail the specifics of the breaches which took place in the 2023 season, so we don't know. We don't know what they've done, but said that neither had exceeded the spending limit. So a procedural breach is typically what would involve around discrepancies in the filing of financial information. So they might have filed it in the wrong format, they might have done it in the wrong way. I mean, you know, there were rumours that Red Bull did a similar thing when they did their cost cap breach. They did some sort of filing error. I mean, officially they said it was because of catering. They went over by $1 million. But a lot of people said that if they actually followed the process, if they did the dummy run in the year before, then they would have been able to get away with it because they would have filed it correctly. But that, again, that's just a rumour. And we don't know what Alpine and, well, let's be honest, Renault and Honda have done here. The FIA said that both Honda and Alpine had acted at all times in good faith and were cooperating with the FIA's cost cap administration team to finalise the matter. The FIA said that it was proposing that both teams enter into a so-called accepted a breach agreement, meaning that the competitor agrees that they have broken the rules and accepts some form of sanction. What would that sanction be though? Well, here's what Honda have said on the matter. They've said, "We would like to discuss the details of the matter after the ABA is disclosed by the FIA. In any case, it was a simple procedural mistake and not at all intentional. Furthermore, even including this procedural error, we have not exceeded the cost cap." So they're not going to get some sort of wind tunnel penalty or something like that. I mean, Honda aren't even a works team, they are an engine supplier. An Alpine spokesman said the following as well: "The breach in question is directly in relation to Alpine Racing, and that's the engine department of Virachation, not the actual Formula 1 team in Enstone, and relates to an administrative issue and is in no way associated to financial overspending. We acknowledge and accept the findings of the review process and remain in regular dialogue with the FIA to ensure future compliance." Honda has been contacted for comment. I mean, they already gave one, but that's okay. The statement added that all 10 teams have been found in compliance with the cost cap on their chassis manufacturing side. So I guess there must be a difference between chassis and engine when it comes to the regulations. They must be separate entities, which kind of makes sense, to be fair, because like Haas, for example, are a customer team, so they should be judged for the chassis side and have nothing to do with the engines because they don't manufacture their engines, they're supplied by Ferrari. Last season was the first season in which all the cost cap applied to engine manufacturers as well as teams. Okay, so it only applied to teams before, now it applies to engine manufacturers. This makes a bit more sense now. In 2022, the FIA found that Red Bull had overspent by $1.8 million in the first year of the cost cap of the previous season. The team were fined $7 million and given a 10% reduction in aerodynamic wind tunnel time. The same year, Aston Martin were also fined to have committed a procedural breach and were fined $450,000. So if it's a procedural breach similar to what Aston Martin did, then you would expect them both to get fined a little bit. But yeah, interesting. I mean, for one, I didn't even know that Honda were fully still in Formula 1. I thought that the Red Bull now is branded as Red Bull Powertrains. But obviously, I guess Honda must have some skin in the game still. I know they've still got a lot of the staff and stuff like that. So basically, guys, unfortunately, we don't know what they've actually done. We just know that it's a procedural error, and we know that, you know, they haven't overspent in the cost cap. Nobody has overspent in the cost cap this year, just gone in 2023. So no one's going to get a penalty like Red Bull did a couple of years ago. But I would expect Alpine and Honda to get a little fine, probably. And that's probably what the sanctions they're referring to. But there we go, guys. So nothing too major. It seems like quite an alarming headline, but yeah, nothing too major really. And just keep calm and carry on. They'll pay the fine and keep going with what they're doing. So yeah, that's why Alpine and Honda are in a bit of trouble, but not proper trouble. Not like Red Bull a couple of years trouble. So, oh boy, it seems like a sad story for sure. Seems as though the end could be nigh for the Belgian Grand Prix in Formula 1 because the government in Belgium is going to wind down their financial backing of the event. Now, for those that don't know, most Formula 1 Grand Prix are bankrolled at least partly by the government of the nations they are taking part in. Not all of them, of course. Ones like Las Vegas are privately funded, as is even the British Grand Prix, and I believe as well the Dutch Grand Prix as well. So there are a few exceptions to that rule. Belgium, though, most of I imagine a significant portion of the race hosting fee, which you have to pay to Formula 1 to be on the calendar, a lot of that is funded by the Belgian government for the Belgian Grand Prix. However, going off this, it looks like their funding may be winding down, but let's have a look at what's been said here. Full article on the F1Chronicle.com, as always, guys. Organisers of the Belgian Grand Prix think they are making progress to keep their Formula 1 race at the fabled Spa-Francorchamps circuit alive. Late last year, the sports owners agreed to make a mere 1-year extension of the previous contract, meaning at the moment 2025 is currently the last scheduled Belgian Grand Prix. It's believed that F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali intends to pair some of the European rounds together to free up space on the annual calendar and enables events like Spa to enjoy lower costs because they'll only be hosting one race every 2 years. Yes, low overall cost, but at what price? At what price, man? Like, it's such a legendary event. It's been there since 1950. It's been there since the start, and taking it off the calendar even for the odd year does not sit right with me at all. According to Belgian broadcaster, the regional Walloon government gives the promoters at Spa between 3 and 8 million euros per year, which is actually a small fraction of how much it costs to stay on the calendar. But Pierre-Yves Gehelet, let's go with Gehelet. Pierre. The Walloon Minister of the Economy insists that by 2029 public intervention will decrease. We must be able to develop an activity without calling on the Mr. Cash of the Walloon region, he said. For 2 years, the circuit has been generating profits, efforts are being made, but we must go further and find more sponsorship and advertising and attract private investors in order to limit public intervention. Marie Bartholomew, saying that wrong probably, do apologise. The general manager of the iconic Spa circuit acknowledges that the financial situation surrounding the Belgian Grand Prix going forward must change. We are going to discuss with the Walloon government, he said, but we have financial results that are on a sustained and positive trajectory. This will allow us to consider the phasing out of public funding in the short term. Minister, that guy, told the Brussels Times this week that he is personally involved in the current negotiations for 26 and beyond. We are making progress, he said, but not at any cost. The negotiation will continue. Yeah, there's mixed messages there, to say the least. I mean, yeah, if you can get more private investors and people to invest in the race and replace that public funding effectively, then great. But what if it doesn't come? What if it doesn't come? And how long is this deal they're going to do it for? And is it going to be a rotation thing? Because there is big talk about Belgium and the Netherlands rotating alternatively. There's even talks about Imola and Barcelona being secondary races of Italy and Spain, and those two rotating every other year as well. So I'm a bit downtrodden about it, to be honest. I really don't know what to think about it. They're very much giving the kind of appearance of it's all under control, guys, but it's all under control until it's not. And I am not confident about this working out. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Spa stays on the calendar. It should be on the calendar of Formula 1 forever. I understand that Formula 1 needs to find a deal that is beneficial to both them and Spa, but Formula 1 it's got to be careful. You've got to be, I mean, it's one thing to get rid of Germany and France, which is bad, but when you start getting rid of an event that is universally loved by everybody in Formula 1, then you are really pushing your luck. But it's just my opinion. So Adrian Newey has signed for Aston Martin as their new designer for 25. This has been heavily rumoured for a long time, but early on, when it was first announced that he was going to leave Red Bull at the end of the season, the strong rumour, or at least the romantic fantasy in a sense in Formula 1 fans' mind, would have been for him to go to Ferrari. After all, Ferrari are the most successful team in Formula 1 history, and he almost joined them all the way back in about 2012, I think it was, something like that. On top of that, you've also got the fact that Sir Lewis Hamilton's there, and you've got an incredible driver there too, in the form of Charles. It almost seemed like a love triangle made in heaven almost. You know, you've got the most successful team in Ferrari, the most successful driver in F1 history in Lewis Hamilton, and also the most successful designer in F1 history too, in the form of Adrian Newey. But it didn't happen. So why? Well, there's a few theories, and one of the prevailing ones that's come out recently, and there's a full article on F1Chronicle.com that explains this. It's partly because the team boss Fred Vasseur couldn't get on the same page as Adrian Newey. So, what happened? Why couldn't they see eye to eye? Let's have a look. Ferrari boss Frederic Vasseur admits that he recently held talks with Adrian Newey, Most Formula One teams, if not all, also explored the golden opportunity of snapping up the sport's most coveted technical brain since he announced earlier this year that he would be progressively stepping away from Red Bull. In the end, Adrian Newey's two biggest options were Ferrari and Aston Martin, and billionaire Lawrence Stroll's Silverstone-based team project ultimately won the day. The news will be confirmed officially at Aston Martin's refurbished Silverstone HQ on Tuesday. Already has been. The Spanish broadcaster DAZN will even be putting on the event on television live, as it did in Sky Sports F1 here in the UK. And that was also given the fact that they got Aston Martin, who have Fernando Alonso there, that's their key driver there. Pedro de la Rosa, who's an Aston Martin brand ambassador these days, he used to be a Formula 1 driver himself, will be on hand to give his live reaction, a sure sign that the press conference really is to confirm the seismic Newey news. In fact, it even said it on the TV guide description here in the UK. They're set to announce Adrian Newey. They didn't hide it at all. Some weeks ago, it was suggested that talks between Newey and Ferrari boss Vasseur broke down because of the British engineer's excessive demands. Excessive. I'd have pulled out the checkbook if I were him, I'll be honest, but let's see. There were discussions, according to Vasseur, when he was speaking to L'Equipe. He probably had a different idea of what I had in mind for him. Maybe we'll be on the same page one day. That possibility will have to wait. However, with an authoritative sources reporting that Newey has signed a 5-year contract with Aston Martin, earning him an eye-watering $150 million. He has a basic wage of $30 million. Plus, he's a shareholder. Plus, he'll get bonuses. Plus, all sorts of other stuff too. So, you're talking at least £30 million a year rather than dollars. You're talking, $200 million by the time the thing's finished. Vasseur insists that he has no great regrets that Ferrari didn't secure the deal. It's not an individual that determines the outcome for a team. The group is always stronger than the individual. I agree to an extent, but he's a very strong individual. Ferrari recently lost its technical director Enrico Cardielli to Aston Martin and has snapped up Mercedes' Loic Serra to replace him. Loic's strength is that he is a very experienced man who has worked at the highest level for an enormous amount of time. He is also a real racer. Another new signing for Ferrari is former Formula 1 driver Jerome D'Ambrosio, who was most recently in a management role alongside Toto Wolff at Mercedes. It was important to have someone with his knowledge, referring to D'Ambrosio. He has experienced everything in the racing world as a driver, as a team boss, a CEO. He knows this job. Yeah, he also knows Mercedes too, so that's part of the reason why they probably did it. But yeah, interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't know what Newey was demanding. And if Newey demanded that he was on $30 million a year, Ferrari could have afforded that. Ferrari are one of the richest teams in Formula 1. You think about how much they're paying Sir Lewis Hamilton. They could afford it. But it's also about other things as well, about his actual control in the team. I mean, Adrian Newey's actual position is something like technical director at Aston Martin. He's also a partner as well. He's a shareholder. Would Ferrari have allowed Newey to become on the board, a significant shareholder in the team? Probably not. So that's probably why he had excessive demands. I don't think it was necessarily his wage, but also his role in the team, and in terms of being a partner as well. He would have got the offer from Aston Martin and been like, look guys, Ferrari, can you match this? And they've been like, no signore, sorry. So yeah, I think that's probably what happened there. I mean, it would have been awesome to see him at Ferrari, but I think him being at Aston Martin is also very successful. And I've just been watching an interview actually with him on High Performance, which is very interesting. I've not watched it all yet, but I've watched the early parts of it, and he said, and I quote, that I don't join teams that are being successful. Ferrari are extremely successful, and they've had some decent success in recent years. They've had some wins. Aston Martin have not won a race since they've come back into Formula 1. And that outfit has never won a championship of either drivers or constructors. In its current guise as Aston Martin, or going all the way back to the Jordan days, they've never done it. They've always been the plucky underdog. Now they could become the behemoth, the monster that Lawrence Stroll wants them to be. And I see no reason why they can't do that with Adrian Newey at the helm. But what do you guys think? Should Ferrari have tried harder to sign Adrian Newey, or were they right to say no? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, keep it tuned here to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more video content when it comes to F1 news, F1 opinions, and everything else in between.